Hello, and thank you for joining me on Troubleshooting and Performance on OCI. My name is Larry Beausoleil, a OCI Enablement Product Manager. And here's a quick safe harbor statement, so give a second to read over this. This module is going to cover identity and access management policy troubleshooting, subnet or VCN deletion, a little bit of block volume performance, and then we're going to talk about what happens if you're unable to SSH or connect to a web server. The first one we're going to talk about is policies. So if you have a policy attached at compartment level, a policy attached at a group level, or policies for dynamic groups, and you're getting errors such as access denied or something similar to that, this would be a step to actually, go through the groups, find where that policy is attached, maybe create a new policy, and do some testing, and kind of open it up to starts, and then you're going to limit it as you go. So there's two mindsets here. Your end result policy that you want to make is least privilege principle possible. With doing this is something that we want to, when we're looking at troubleshooting, we may open this up a little bit while we're trying to diagnose, what's happening in our policy. We have to consider the syntax. We have to consider the APIs associated with the call we're making. So if we're trying to access the instances, we're trying to access networking, do we have all of the policies permissions allowed to do so? This can be found by going to the OCI console. And as you kind of see here, just a quick snippet from the console of identity. We can select groups, policies, and compartments because policies can be in different compartment levels, and so that might cause some issues as we kind of go through this process. So making sure that those are tagged so you can sort through them is a good idea. The next one we want to briefly talk about is subnet or VCN deletion. So if we're trying to delete a subnet, when we go to delete it and it gives us an error saying, you're unable to delete this, there are still resources essentially. This is something that you'll have to go back through and make sure that your instance is deleted, or if maybe you have a load balancer that's still associated with a specific subnet, you need to delete that resource. And this is the same at the VCN level deletion. So there is a nice little interface. So when you click on the VCN deletion, that it'll go through all of the steps and it'll say, okay, subnets are deleted, all of these components are deleted. If it fails the first time, there may still be resources at the subnet level that are causing this problem. And it'll kind of give you some guidance at the bottom of where you need to find those. But really what it comes down to is if you have multiple subnets, go through and clean up any resources in those, and then go and clean up the VCN or the subnet. For block volume performance, this comes down to what your workload is. So you can actually do some testing on the specific block volume. There's SLAs around balance and higher performance for the block volumes, but not around lower cost settings. So when you set this up, if you're trying to make sure that your 4K block size on a 500 gigabyte volume is giving you a specific amount of IOPS, you can run this test and see if it's meeting your needs. This will also dictate, from a troubleshooting or testing perspective, you may have to do some re-architecture if it's not enough IOPS, and that's where you may add more volumes and may do a RAID configuration and then do another one of these FIO tests. And this is a tool that you can install in Linux. There's some other considerations, and that comes down to, are you using any sort of Windows Defender? Are you using any sort of firewall protection? Are you using are you configuring certain RAID configurations? Are you using paravirtualization or iSCSI when you're actually mounting the block volumes? So those are all things that you have to take into consideration, but you can run these tests and see what levels of performance. And then if you actually take a look at our block volume performance page, you'll see some other tests and some other results to verify. And what happens if you're unable to SSH? So the first steps in kind of the process here would be checking your security lists, checking your network security groups. Now, if one of these items, your security list or NSG, have a rule that's open, that means that it's going to be open. The next would be to check your route configurations to make sure that at that subnet you can actually access it, maybe from your on-prem, or if you have a VPN tunnel, making sure that the route configurations, because you're going to a private IP address as opposed to a public IP address, and able to actually hit that resource. Now, once you go through all of these items, like making sure the firewall on the OS is set correctly, if you're still unable to get in, the next would maybe making sure, one, that port 22 is open, two, SSH is actually responding, and this can be done by either running the command as you see on the screen here, so SSH-I, your particular public key, the correct username, the public IP address of the resource, or private IP address if you verified the route to the instance, and then you can run the triple verbose option and see if you're actually getting a correct response that OpenSSH is actually on and running. Now, if this isn't running, then that would be something that you need to maybe stop the instance, or you need to create a custom image, or relaunch, or move the block volume, attach it to another boot volume, and attach it to another resource so that you can actually get back into it, enable that on startup, or you need to delete your key. It all depends on the error that's actually coming out. So let's say the key that you have is no longer responding on the instance. This would be something where you can stop it, move the boot volume to another known working instance, attach it, and then SSH into that, go to the known file for SSH, and re-upload your key there. That would be one step. Another step is just create a custom image of it, relaunch it, and attach a new SSH key. Or, since this is a cloud, with all of these particular things I've talked about, you can always delete it and start fresh. It depends on how much time you have invested into it. If this is a brand new instance and you're having issues with it, don't really dive too much into it. Just kind of delete it and start new, because there may be something on launch when you injected a script or something that kind of changed some configurations, because it's a little bit different than on-prem. Now, if you do launch it, the other thing is using the console access, and you can use console access to get into it to see if there's any issues that you can repair at that time. All right, so in summary, steps to troubleshoot issues on OCI, and this kind of indicates, start small and then expand. If it's, in a lot of cases, it's maybe just a misconfiguration on security list, maybe just need to adjust the route configurations, or if you're trying to delete a VCN or subnet, just making sure all the resources are cleaned up. If you're unable to connect to an instance or a web server, in a lot of cases, that's going to be route table configurations, security lists, making sure you check the OS firewall for Windows or Linux, and policies. If they're attached but unable to access a resource, making sure that the syntax is correct on that, allowing the dynamic group or allowing a specific user to access the item at the tenancy level or the compartment level. And then also checking if you have the correct performance on your block volume. And this is something that, choosing if you have a 4K block size, 8K block size to get that best performance out of the block or boot volumes. Thank you for joining me on Troubleshooting and Performance on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Please take a second to try out Oracle Cloud. Thank you.